Hello friends, to be notified of new videos, you can support me by subscribing to my channel and liking my videos. Enjoy listening. Hello friends, I will tell you about the terrifying events that affected my life that I experienced. My name is Amir Khan. We are a middle-income family living in the city of Yazgat. Before my parents got married, they were next-door neighbors in the village. My father would go to work in his father's field. My mother, on the other hand, would wash clothes in the garden, and when it came to housework, my father saw and liked her while going to and from the field. At that time, since these matters were secretive, they continued secretly for a while. When their relationship was heard in the village, first my mother's father objected, then her aunt objected. At that time, they tried very hard to separate my mother and father, but since my father was determined, they warned him not to come to the village again as a solution. They would kill my mother in the village. The penalty for running away from home shouldn't be this, it was those days. They were newly introduced to city life with my father and faced many difficulties because my father had never worked outside of the field. He struggled in the jobs he entered. Finally, he started working on a construction site and started to make a living. The house he mentioned was the coal shed next to an old detached house. Since the coal shed was a bit large, the owners of the house decided to rent it by making a makeshift kitchen instead of using it as a coal shed and throwing a mattress. At that time, my father also had very little. He had little money, so he rented this place and tried to manage for a while. After a while, my mother became pregnant, and I opened my eyes to the world in that coal shed. My father was working on a construction site, and my mother was taking care of me. The owners of the house felt sorry for our situation. They used to give me their children's old clothes. After many years passed in poverty, it was time for me to start school. They bought me the school uniform and notebook and pencil with the money they saved by tightening their belt. When I started school, as far as I can remember or imagine, my mother used to give me a bread and rose water she made by collecting rose petals from the garden for my snack. At that age, when I looked at my friends' snacks, I would see various breakfast items, French fries, chocolate breads. I only knew them by their smell. I didn't know their tastes. Despite asking a few of my friends, they wouldn't let me come near them in the class because they nicknamed me Dirty. Only one girl friend in the class would share something from her snack with me. She would only talk to me. Her name was Seema. After 4 painful years passed, I moved to the 5th grade. I was a successful child in my lessons. However, our poverty continued. Until now, my father had changed many jobs. He couldn't earn a regular income. Whenever I told my mother many times that I wanted a sibling, she would send me away saying, "How can I take care of him in this poverty? We hardly feed ourselves anyway." As our days were passing like this, one evening our door was knocked. Our landlord Muzzin uncle took my father aside and said, "I decided to sell it like this. If you can give that money, let it not go to a stranger, you buy it." My father replied directly with a smile, "You are generous, brother. I hardly feed my hungry stomach. How can I find that money?" Muzzin uncle left sadly saying, "If this house is sold, they won't let you stay. But be careful, find another house for yourself in a short time, I think." And he left. For the first time, I saw my father so thoughtful, as if his world had collapsed. Even while in this house, I went out and took the bicycle. It was now my bicycle. It felt like a luxury to me at that time. Of course, I had already made a plan. First I would repair it, then paint it. I asked my mother, showing the bicycle where I could repair it. She showed the coal shed, saying, "It's clean there, there is also light. You can work there in the evenings," and gave me the key. I opened the coal shed and took the bicycle inside. I started to dismantle the bicycle with the materials available in my father's toolbox. First, I would separate the broken materials, then I would separate the materials to be welded or repaired. While removing the handlebar of the bicycle, I felt it get stuck on something. It was jammed. After trying hard, my hand was at a place on the handlebar that had been welded before. A piece of iron got stuck and cut it, and a few drops of blood flowed onto my hand. Without caring, I was finally able to remove it at the end of the handlebar. There were newspaper pieces jammed inside it. "What are these?" I started to open the newspaper. I found another paper folded inside the newspaper, similar to straw paper. There were depictions similar to Cyan Ali drawn with a black pen on it. However, next to these depictions, there were symbols written with a red pen and Arabic words. "It must be a refugee child's bicycle." I didn't care, since my blood had already stained the paper. I crumpled it and threw it into the trash can in the coal shed. While I continued to work, suddenly the papers in the trash can started to burn out of nowhere. At that moment, I poured water into it with a PET bottle next to me to extinguish it. After the fire was extinguished, the place was covered with smoke. To avoid being exposed to smoke anymore, I took the trash can outside. How did that trash can burn out of nowhere? I couldn't comprehend it. Anyway, I'm tired today. Saying this, I locked the coal shed door and entered the house. I washed my face and hands and waited for my mother to prepare dinner. When my father entered from the door at that time, I hugged him saying, "Welcome." I told my father that I got a bicycle and started repairing it. My father patted my head saying, "Well done, you have started to achieve things on your own. Start repairing the bicycle. I will buy you the materials," and sat at the head of the dinner prepared on the floor. While we were having our dinner, I noticed something moving on the empty left side of the tablecloth I was sitting on. The tablecloth had slightly risen and stretched. As I was staring blankly at the tablecloth, my mother asked surprisingly, "What happened? Why are you so lost?" I said, "I must be sleepy," without saying anything. This time, the tablecloth hit as if someone was sitting. I averted my eyes. After eating a few more bites, I went to my room and sat at my desk to do homework. When I sat at my desk, I took a notebook, book, and pen. After opening a page of the book, I started writing the topic in the notebook. Suddenly an event that would take my breath away happened. All the pages of the book moved quickly one by one to the end, and the book suddenly closed. I stood up trying to understand what happened. Now a fear had enveloped me. What was happening? First the trash can, then the movements in the tablecloth. Now the book was changing pages by itself. "The best thing is I'm very tired today. I'll read Felak Nas and go to bed," I said. After putting my book and notebook in the bag, I lay down on my bed. Suddenly I felt a depression as if someone jumped on my bed behind me. Usually my mother comes, she kisses me before I sleep. I thought she came, so when I turned around I was shocked. I started to recite the Shahida, started to say the Bismillah. It wasn't my mother in front of me, it was a creature that looked like a child. With a small head, the insides of its eyes were pitch black, it had a terrifying appearance. After screaming in fear, suddenly my mother and father came. They asked, "What happened? Why did you scream?" Looking around, I saw that the weight was gone and said, "I had a dream." My father said, "Mashallah, my son, you are 16 years old, you wake up screaming from a nightmare, be a little brave," and went back. My mother stayed with me saying, "Don't mind your father, you scream and wake up from your feelings. Let me recite the Bismillah, pray, nothing will happen in the name of God." And I continued to sleep doing what she said. When I woke up to the alarm of the morning hour, I was shocked with the images I saw in the room. The mouth of my bag was open, all my notebooks and books were scattered. After quickly collecting them in fear, I put them in my bag. Because I was late for school, I quickly left home and went to school. I told my mother not to prepare breakfast because I didn't like morning breakfast, because it was close to school. I was coming and going home during breaks. After barely making it to school, I entered the first lesson. I took out my book and notebook and put them on the table. When the teacher said, "Open to page 72 in the book," I opened it there and started listening to the teacher. My friend sitting next to me nudged me and asked quietly, "What do you know Arabic from?" I looked at him in surprise and said, "What Arabic? What are you talking about?" Be quiet now, the teacher will see. He continued to nudge me. Dude, what is it? When I said, he showed my notebook on the right side. Here, you wrote it here. When he said, I looked at the notebook. At that moment a fear surged inside me. I started swearing in shock. I couldn't hide my astonishment. The teacher turned to me and started scolding. What happened to Mirhan? Pay attention to the class. I apologized to the teacher and continued to listen to the lesson. I took the notebook in front of me and looked at the Arabic words written under my writing with a pencil. Oh God, be the guardian of my mind, who wrote these here? I can't even write Turkish properly, let alone write in Arabic. My handwriting is so bad that sometimes I can't even read what I wrote. The best thing is, there is a refugee child studying in our class. I will show this writing to him and ask him to tell me what is written. I thought as I waited for the lesson to end. When the bell rang, I went to Basim. He could understand us quite well from living in Turkey for many years, just like our neighbors we called. I went to him and said, Basim brother, I will show you a writing. Can you tell me what is written here? He said, Okay Amirhan, show me. I brought it next to the notebook. After reading what was in the notebook, he asked, Who wrote this? I said, I don't know, the notebook was open, I guess the child of the neighbor wrote it. He started translating. Here someone is saying they are very hungry, they were expecting dinner from you. But you didn't take it to them, they are saying they slept hungry because of you tonight. If you leave me hungry again, you know what I will do to you, it says. He translated. After swallowing with fear and astonishment, Basim laughed. A child wrote it, he wanted to scare you. Why would an adult man write such a thing? Don't worry, don't mind it. If he writes again, bring it, I will translate, he said. I thanked Basim and returned to my seat. I reviewed what happened yesterday. Was a spell cast on me? Who is doing this at this hour? These things I am experiencing are not normal things. Now if I tell my mom and dad, their troubles are above their heads. Let's see what I will encounter when I go home, I thought as I returned to my lesson. Meanwhile, I constantly felt the presence of something like a cold wind next to me. I was getting shivers involuntarily from time to time. When there was a break, I quickly went home, ate, and returned to school. On the way back to school, I still felt the presence of someone next to me. I felt as if I was going and coming with someone. After entering the school, I didn't experience anything strange until the evening. When it was evening and I returned home, I went directly to the coal shed to continue repairing the bicycle. However, things were constantly falling from their places in the coal shed, making noises, scaring me. I left the work in my hand and quickly entered the house, asking my mother if the food was ready. I asked for permission, saying I would eat it in the coal shed. Although my mother grumbled a bit, she gave me the plate and sent me. I entered the coal shed as I took it in the morning. After putting the plate in one corner, I knelt in the other corner and started waiting. I wonder if this jinn entity will come. Anyway, will I see it? I started watching the plate attentively. After about 10 minutes, a mouse came out of a hole and came next to the plate and started smelling it. While I was thinking whether the mouse was the one who came, suddenly the mouse started screaming and writhing. I could hear the sound of the mouse's thin bones breaking. I carefully watched the mouse that died screaming and writhing. Suddenly the lamp in the coal shed started to flicker. After the lamp completely went out, I stayed in the dark in horror and fear for about 10 seconds. I was trying to see something looking around me. I could feel the coldness circulating around me, but I couldn't see it. When the light came back 10 seconds later, I looked at the plate. At that moment I started to recite the Shahida. I prayed. I couldn't believe what I saw. I went next to the plate and examined it. The foods in the plate were as if they had been left outside for days. They were rotten and dried. If it stayed longer, it would change its shape and look like it had been left outside for days. I threw the food that my mother cooked into the trash can like that, and then poured it into the big trash outside. The moment I poured it into the trash, a few cats came and entered the trash. I thought they came to eat that food I threw away. I didn't care. The cats came out of the trash can like they were pulled by the moon and started writhing on the ground. While watching them wondering what was happening, both of them struggled until they became motionless, foaming at the mouth. Without anyone seeing, I looked inside the trash, wondering if they ate the food I threw away. It was exactly as I thought. They had eaten the dried remains left from what I gave, then they were struggling. Oh God, be the guardian of my mind! How did I get into this? How will I get rid of this entity? It became a trouble for me. It can even write in my notebook at any moment, "What is this? Please save me." I prayed. After experiencing these, I locked the door of the coal shed and entered the house. I put the plate in the kitchen and washed it and put it back. When my mother said why I came early, continued to make the bicycle, I said I was tired. "Okay, when your father comes from work, let him help you," she said. I panicked and shouted, "No, it can't be." My mother must have suspected from this state. "What happened? Is something bothering you? Tell me," she insisted. I said, "I swear there is nothing." Swearing. I went to my room to study. I opened my notebook and book and started studying. However, I didn't feel like studying from inside. I was thinking about how to get rid of these terrifying events. I was thinking every evening, will I have to feed this jinn? What if one day my mother suspects? What if she wants to learn the truth? I can't let them get hurt, I said. First, I tried to find a way to handle this myself. I started writing something in Arabic under the writing I wrote in the notebook from the internet. "What do you want to leave me?" I carefully inscribed the Arabic equivalent into the notebook. Then I finished the homework left from the previous day and went to bed. I left that notebook outside so that it could somehow see it open. What I did may seem absurd. However, when you are in such a situation, you don't know what to do. In the morning, I quickly looked at the notebook. As I expected, there was Arabic writing in the notebook. I went to school to show this writing to Basim. Before the lesson started, I went to Basim and asked the meaning of the writing. Basim said, "Amirhan, whoever writes this is having a good time with you." I was eagerly waiting for what he would say. "It writes here, 'Find my body. It is trying to scare you.'" When he said Bispel, I lost myself. Hot water poured down from my head. I sat down at my desk and started waiting. Seeing this state of mind, Basim came to me and asked if there was a problem. Even though I said no, he insisted on meeting during the break and said, "You can tell me." I said I will tell you and returned to my lesson. After getting through the first lesson, we went outside with Basim. We quickly told him what happened during the 10-minute break. He said with astonishment, "Really, is this jinn writing these?" When I said yes, I asked, "Can I come to you today?" I asked. He asked, "You are crazy, what will you do in half an hour?" I said, "Okay, I believe in such things. You know my father was a teacher in Syria. Let me see it first, then we go to my father and ask for help." I hugged and thanked him. He was more understanding than most of my friends at school. It was very obvious that he came from a good family. At lunchtime, I quickly went home to eat, ate, and left. As I was passing through the garden, suddenly there started to be hits on the door of the coal shed from inside. At that moment, I went towards the coal shed, wondering what was happening. I looked inside through the small window. God, I passed out because of the things I saw from that window. There were dozens of cats, mice, and animal corpses in one place. It seems this jinn had eaten them from hunger, and killed them. Because the animals were rotten and their skins were retracted, their bones were literally counted. The best thing is not to let my mother know about the situation. I went to school thinking that when Basim comes in the evening, he will see it too and we will clean it together. I went to school. At school, after finishing our lessons, we came home with Basim. I told my mother that I had given the key to the coal shed to Basim to repair the bicycle. After my mother gave the key, we entered the coal shed with Basim. However, there were neither animal corpses nor any other animal corpses in the middle. After telling Vasim what happened, Vasim put an apple he took out of his bag in the corner where I put it. We both retreated to a corner and started watching what would happen. Then, after a while, the lights in the coal shed started to flicker again. After the light went out and came back on in about 10 seconds, we ran and looked at the apple. The apple had rotted as if it had been left there for years. Only the shell remained. Vasim said, "Let's go to my father right away." We went to his father with the apple. I started telling his father what happened. While repairing the bicycle, my hand was cut, papers came out from inside the handlebar, even my blood got on that paper. Then when I threw it in the trash can, it burned. Then what I told happened, I said. Vasim's father started saying, "Ta vestagfer," and started explaining. "Look, son, what happened to you is not a jinn at this hour. It is the lost soul of someone who was killed by a jinn from this world. We don't come across this much. It is generally done in Syria and Arabia. If someone has done this magic unconsciously and the person who was enchanted was not buried properly, it can haunt the person who found the magic to ask for help from a person. If there is something more terrible than a jinn, it is a lost soul. This soul is probably constantly tormented by the jinns and is asking for help from people to get rid of them. You need to solve this situation as soon as possible. Otherwise, if the jinn who stole that soul finds you, this magic will happen to you. Even worse things will happen, and be sure it will not leave you without taking your life," he said. I started crying, saying, "What will I do now?" Vasim's father said, "Let Vasim help you. Try to communicate with the spirit. Ask where its body is as you told me. Somehow reach the body of that person, whoever it is. You have to hurry, otherwise it can haunt you at any moment. Go now, be careful. We don't even know who the family of the dead spirit is. Move carefully. Let me know if you find anything. And send us off." I went to my room to study. I opened my notebook and book and started studying. However, I didn't feel like studying from inside. I was thinking about how to get rid of these terrifying events. I was thinking every evening, will I have to feed this jinn? What if one day my mother suspects? What if she wants to learn the truth? I can't let them get hurt, I said. First, I tried to find a way to handle this myself. I started writing something in Arabic under the writing I wrote in the notebook from the internet. "What do you want to leave me?" I carefully inscribed the Arabic equivalent into the notebook. Then I finished the homework left from the previous day and went to bed. I left that notebook outside so that it could somehow see it open. What I did may seem absurd. However, when you are in such a situation, you don't know what to do. In the morning, I quickly looked at the notebook. As I expected, there was Arabic writing in the notebook. I went to school to show this writing to Basim. Before the lesson started, I went to Basim and asked the meaning of the writing. Basim said, "Amirhan, whoever writes this is having a good time with you." I was eagerly waiting for what he would say. "It writes here, 'Find my body. It is trying to scare you.'" When he said Bispel, I lost myself. Hot water poured down from my head. I sat down at my desk and started waiting. Seeing this state of mind, Basim came to me and asked if there was a problem. Even though I said no, he insisted on meeting during the break and said, "You can tell me." I said I will tell you and returned to my lesson. After getting through the first lesson, we went outside with Basim. We quickly told him what happened during the 10-minute break. He said with astonishment, "Really, is this jinn writing these?" When I said yes, I asked, "Can I come to you today?" I asked. He asked, "You are crazy, what will you do in half an hour?" I said, "Okay, I believe in such things. You know my father was a teacher in Syria. Let me see it first, then we go to my father and ask for help." I hugged and thanked him. He was more understanding than most of my friends at school. It was very obvious that he came from a good family. At lunchtime, I quickly went home to eat, ate, and left. As I was passing through the garden, suddenly there started to be hits on the door of the coal shed from inside. At that moment, I went towards the coal shed, wondering what was happening. I looked inside through the small window. God, I passed out because of the things I saw from that window. There were dozens of cats, mice, and animal corpses in one place. It seems this jinn had eaten them from hunger and killed them. Because the animals were rotten and their skins were retracted, their bones were literally counted. The best thing is not to let my mother know about the situation. I went to school thinking that when Vasim comes in the evening, he will see it too and we will clean it together. I went to school. At school, after finishing our lessons, we came home with Basim. I told my mother that I had given the key to the coal shed to Basim to repair the bicycle. After my mother gave the key, we entered the coal shed with Basim. However, there were neither animal corpses nor any other animal corpses in the middle. After telling Vasim what happened, Vasim put an apple he took out of his bag in the corner where I put it. We both retreated to a corner and started watching what would happen. Then, after a while, the lights in the coal shed started to flicker again. After the light went out and came back on in about 10 seconds, we ran and looked at the apple. The apple had rotted as if it had been left there for years. Only the shell remained. Vasim said, "Let's go to my father right away." We went to his father with the apple. I started telling his father what happened. While repairing the bicycle, my hand was cut, papers came out from inside the handlebar, even my blood got on that paper. Vasim and I started going back home. While discussing what we needed to do on the way, I saw the junk dealer where I bought the bicycle. I ran to the junk dealer and asked, "Brother, do you remember me? I bought a bicycle from you." He remembered and asked what happened. I asked him where I could find the previous owner of the bicycle. After thinking for a while, the junk dealer said, "Honestly, I bought it from a Syrian family living in a house with a green door 4 streets up." Thanking him, Vasim and I went there. We went up 4 streets and started looking for the house with the green door. However, there were 3 houses with green doors on that street. We knocked on the doors one by one and asked who lived there. Actually, we didn't know what to ask, but we were trying to find the Syrian family and figure something out. The people in the first house we entered were Turkish. We entered the second house. The occupants were Syrians. Just as we were happy thinking we had finally found them, Vasim said, "Let's check the other one too, maybe they are Syrians too." We knocked on their door, and finding Syrians living there as Vasim said, we understood that our target was one of those 2 houses. When they opened the door, we asked if they had sold a bicycle. Both of them strangely said they had no information about our bicycle. One of them was lying, but who? After it got quite dark, Vasim and I returned to our homes. I didn't know how to get through this night. I was thinking, what will I do if that gender happens to me? The teacher said that before this hour, we had to find the body of the chorus and bury it somehow. When I entered the house, I saw that the door of the coal shed was open. Since the light was on, I was nervous thinking either my mom or dad had come. When I entered, my dad was examining the bicycle. "What are you doing, Dad?" I asked. The moment my dad turned around, it felt like my eyes were going to pop out. What I saw in front of me was someone with my dad's body but with eyes glowing bright red, a distorted face, and hands covered in bloodstains. I screamed in fear and ran away into the house. After my mom hugged me asking what happened, my dad entered somehow and asked, "What happened, Amir Khan? Why did you scream and run when you saw me?" I swallowed hard and said I had seen a hallucination. My dad scolded me saying, "There is something wrong with you. Don't go to school tomorrow, we will go to the hospital." Even though I insisted that there was nothing wrong, my dad said he would take me there persistently, and called his foreman at work to take a leave. This would be a lost day for me, so I quickly ate my dinner and went to my room. I was going to write something in the notebook and wait for a reply. When the reply came, I would send the picture to Vasim, and he would tell me the meaning. I could translate what was written in Turkish to Arabic on the computer, but since I couldn't write the translations into the notebook, I didn't know what was happening. Suddenly, I remembered that I hadn't brought coal for food. I started praying nervously, hoping nothing would happen. I wrote directly in the notebook, "Where can I find it?" I couldn't think of anything else to ask. After waiting for a while and seeing no activity, I thought it was best to sleep. "He will probably right after I fall asleep," I said and lay down in bed. The moment I tried to sleep, the bed started to move violently, as if trying to throw me off. I couldn't maintain my balance on the bed anymore, so I decided to get off. I sat on the floor trying to understand what was happening. Suddenly, I noticed noises coming from under the bed. When I looked there with fearful eyes, I realized there was a small child with red eyes looking at me. He was saying something different to me, calling me under the bed. I got up in fear and headed towards the door. I tried to turn the door handle and open it, but I couldn't turn the handle. Suddenly, he was there, slowly coming out from under the bed and approaching me. "Forgive me, O Lord." He was moving his head up and down in a severed way. "What do you want from me? Who are you? Go away!" I started screaming. My goal was to make my mom and dad hear my voice and come to me, but neither my mom nor my dad came to me. The creature resembling a small child approached me, saying something incomprehensible again. Its movements were a bit disabled. One hand was up, the other was down, and it walked backward, limping. As it approached me, I threw myself back to prevent it from coming to me. I tried the door handle again, and finally got out of the room. I quickly went to my parents' room to wake them up, but when I saw them lying in bed with their throats slit, I started examining my mom and dad to understand what was happening. "Forgive me, O Lord." They were both lying motionless in bed with their throats slit. Suddenly, I felt something in my hand. What I was holding was a knife I had never seen before, and there was blood on it. "Oh God, did I kill them, my mom and dad?" I started crying in fear. I threw myself out and started running on the street, but there was a strange situation on the street. It was as if a cloud of dust like coal dust had covered the surroundings. I couldn't see anything. As we progressed, my breath was getting shorter, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. Everywhere looked pitch black, as if I was walking in utter darkness. To escape this pitch darkness, I headed towards my home, which was the only source of light. As I was about to re-enter our home, I noticed that the light in the coal shed was on, and heard screaming sounds coming from inside. I slowly approached the coal shed and was shocked by what I saw inside. The child who came out from under my bed was lying on the ground, and a creature with scales like fish scales on its body, and a huge horned head was biting and tearing pieces off the child's body. The spirit was screaming something I couldn't understand. The moment the creature on the spirit turned around, I came face to face with its terrifying face. I didn't know what to do, so I ran directly into the house. I hid under my quilt, waiting for the screams to stop. Suddenly, the quilt was pulled off quickly, and I saw my father asking, "What happened, son? Why are you screaming?" I looked around and ran to my mother, checking her neck left and right. I found her sitting upright in bed and used the same excuse that I had a nightmare. My father, puzzled, said we would go tomorrow to see what was happening and went to his room. I threw myself back in my room, and since I couldn't sleep, I started looking at something on the computer. Finally, I took a deep breath and suddenly noticed my notebook lying on the side. I remembered not leaving it there before. I opened it to see if anything was written inside and looked at the text written with wide open eyes like a falcon stone. After sending the picture to Vasim, I called him to wake him up when he didn't see my passive message right away. After telling him that I sent the picture, he said he was looking and hung up. A little later, Vasim called me with an excited voice tone saying, "I am in the coal shed." I asked, "What do you mean, in our coal shed?" He said, "No, according to the writing here, it says in the coal shed of our house." I said all we have to do now is to enter that coal shed and reach that body. I thought about reporting it to the police a few times, but I didn't trust them much, thinking they would consider me just a child having hallucinations and dreams. Therefore, finding evidence and going to the police seemed more logical to me. I told Vasim to meet right away, and we would secretly check that coal shed. At that moment, I remembered that my father would take me to the doctor with permission, so I had to escape from home without them seeing me. I quickly left a note in my room apologizing and left the house secretly with my bag on my back. As I passed by the coal shed, the sounds continued to come. I went to the place where Vasim and I agreed without dealing with it. I asked Vasim how we would find that coal shed. He said one of the two houses is it anyway. We will go in and check both, whichever has a coal shed in its garden, that's it. If both have it, we don't know, our job is difficult. We decided to go to the first one and jumped into its garden from the back street. When we came to the coal shed, we quietly scouted around. The coal shed was empty, so we probably thought it was the other house and left from where we entered and went to the other place. After entering its garden, we saw that the coal shed was facing the windows of the house. After thinking quietly about how we would enter this coal shed, we said whatever happens, happens, and quietly headed towards the coal shed. After slowly opening the iron door and entering, we closed it back. In this quite dark coal shed, we looked left and right with the flashlights of our phones. There were piled coal bags in front of us. However, what caught our attention was that there were 4 rows of coal bags, and it seemed as if they were placed to cover a corner. Vasim climbed on top of the bags and looked into that corner, seeing coal spread there. It had been taken out of the bags and spread as it was. The edges were lined with coal in the bags to prevent the coal from spilling. Every family who uses coal knows that coal is not spilled like that in the coal shed, it is kept in the bag. When it is going to be burned, it is kept in small bags and thrown into the stove with the bag. We could hardly breathe from the dust and smell of the open coals. We understood that they were definitely spilled to cover a smell. Most likely, our body was under these coal stones, and coal was piled on it to prevent it from smelling, but we couldn't accuse without evidence. So we looked around for other things, and when we saw bicycle rims and tires there, we were convinced that this was definitely the place. We looked around a bit and saw paper pieces jammed into the walls and gaps. When we opened and looked at one, we found a paper similar to the large paper I saw. We had finally found it. The magic was done here. It was probably under the coals, but if the child died of natural causes or if the jinn killed, why didn't they bury it? Why did they hide it here and didn't tell anyone? Come on, let's go, I said, and as we were secretly leaving the coal shed, the woman who owned the house saw us. She started chasing us, shouting something in Arabic and throwing stones at us from behind. I asked Vasim what the woman said to us. He said she cursed at us. Amirhan, I think we should report it immediately, otherwise they might change the location of the body, he said. I also rightly agreed with him. Without telling my mom and dad, we held the police. After telling the police what happened, they said we had to come to our guardians because of our age. I reluctantly went to my mom and dad and told them everything one by one. Although my mom and dad didn't want to believe what happened, they couldn't resist my insistence and accepted. They came to the police station after informing their own parents and reporting to the police. After reporting to the police, we went there for the place to be examined. When the homeowner saw the police at the door, she wanted to send them away. We reported because we saw it. Because we knew they couldn't go on something we didn't see. The police started working there too. About half an hour, 45 minutes later, a police officer came out and came to us. While we were afraid that he would say there is no body, "Why did you bother us?" he said. "Well done, kids, just as you said, a body came out from among the coals. We will inform you after examining it," and send us to our homes. As we were going to leave the garden, we saw something being taken out in a body bag from the coal shed. After we went to our knees, my mom and dad said they were proud of me and they were hugging me. A while later, after it was late in the evening, the door of the house rang. The one who came was one of the police officers working today. The police officer started explaining after entering. The foreign national family confessed everything. They had a disabled child. The child was constantly harming himself and his surroundings because he was disabled. They decided to hide it from everyone, thinking they would think we did it. They didn't even get an ID for the child when they entered the country. So, in fact, the child seemed not to be within the borders of Turkey. They put it under the coals so that it wouldn't spread its smell and rot there, saying they would hold us accountable. They tried so hard to kill it that they put magic everywhere. May God give them wisdom. We are in which century? They are still talking about magic, he said. Then turning to me, he said, "Young man, well done. You helped the poor child find its father. Who knows when this body would come out if it weren't for you? Maybe they would burn and destroy it with the coals. Take care, may God be pleased with you. And asked for permission and left. After my family congratulated me once more, this became the biggest adventure I experienced in my life. From that day on, neither Cole nor in my room did I see the spirit of that child, nor was there any jinn possession. I was praying as Vasim's father said that the teacher did not possess me. Maybe, who knows, that child's spirit struggled so that it would not possess me. Now I understand everything better. May God not bring the two ends of such people together in the world. Hopefully, Vasim and I are close friends now. Sometimes we tell each other scary stories and spend time. Sometimes we listen to Erkin's stories. When I wanted to share my own story, he didn't refuse me. Thank you for listening to my story. Stay healthy, hopefully. That's the story, friends. Thank you for listening. I love you very much. If you are still not subscribed to my channel, you can be notified of new upcoming videos by subscribing and turning on notifications. See you in new videos. Take care.